Well, it's time for another project. I've got something here I've been looking for a very long time. I paid pretty good money for it, so I hope it's in good shape. We're about to open it up, check it out. And I'm overdue for a project like this. I'm just in the mood to do a new building. So, let's see. Well packed. This thing weighs about 5.5 pounds. And it appears we've got the original packing. Got it. Pretty cool. So we're gonna open this up. I'm gonna take a look at these hydrocal castings, and depending on their condition, this should set the tone for this project. So let's get into it. See if I remembered how to use a box cutter here. This one has been quite elusive all these years, and pretty happy to find it. Of course, whenever I've come across them, they've been pretty pricey. So this one was not cheap, but it wasn't like a rip-off or nothing. So these are some plaster hydrocal cast crates and stuff like that. Anyway, here's the main castings. You can see how these were packed, and I will tell you, this was probably never opened. I don't know what year this came out. I'll have to do a little research on that. Early 2000s. I don't know. It's like kind of my favorite era of O-gauge. These rubber bands have kind of lost their elasticity. So I recommend, if you get one of these kits, don't be afraid of broken castings, but take your time and undo the packing here carefully or semi-carefully, depending on your excitement level. I just want to see what shape these are in more than anything. Well, that's good news so far. These two front peaks are just fine. Really cool. I've really wanted to do one of these videos for a long time, show people how I do my Downtown Deco buildings. I really wish he would do more stuff in O-scale, especially some of these larger buildings. He's got some very unique designs. I've always been a fan. I've built a few of his over the years and then kind of made them my own with some simple mods. That's great. Everything's in good shape. But generally I follow his ideas to kind of, oh, that's nice, to kind of show my admiration of his efforts. He does a lot of stuff in HO and a lot of stuff I wish he would do in O-scale. Some of his HO designs are really cool too. Oh man, I'm stoked. Everything's in good shape, guys, girls, everybody. Yeah, I've never seen one of these built. Never seen one of these in the wild. Never even seen like the kit available. So as you can see, it's a pretty good sized building. And what I like to do with this stuff is build the basic shell. So it'll be just a hydrocal shell. I'll build some kind of base for it, most likely out of like 1/4-inch masonite MDF. And then I'm gonna kind of decide, I haven't quite decided yet where it's gonna go in the layout. There's a couple potential spots. And we're gonna go from there. Yeah, but I'm really excited. The this profile would look so cool, kind of peeking over some maybe lower profile buildings. But then again, the front is so intriguing. It's going to have these kind of storefronts. You know, seeing it directly head on from the front edge of the layout is cool too. So I have some choices to make. But in the meantime, I'm gonna clean up my packing here, lay these out, and see about doing the initial kind of box build on it. So I've never gotten to see this kit before, like I had mentioned, and I wasn't quite sure what he had in mind for it. And I always notice when I've seen these before, I've always noticed this hotel sign, which is cool enough, you know. But apparently, it's a junk shop, and the bottoms up bar with a really cool sign. Look at that sign. So I don't like right there. I mean that is pretty cool. There's nothing wrong with that at all. And look at these upstairs windows. You know, I could go to town with my interiors and kind of make some honest places kind of looking ramshackle apartments or whatever. But yeah, I'm pretty stoked on it so far. This is going to be a fun build. Something else here. Oh wow, little bonus round here. Appears to be a little corrugated iron shack. That's pretty cool. Let's see what else is in here. Recommendations on how to start the assembly. All right, I got everything laid out here so I can see what's going on. And the rear wall needs to be assembled like this. And the basic idea here is I want to build a shell so that I can get the dimensions to build a base. On all of my, just about all my Downtown Deco buildings, I'll make a base out of 1/4-inch MDF masonite, and it makes for a pretty stable, strong assembly. I'm just looking at some of these castings versus some of his photos. There's some curious pieces here, like I don't know what that is. These are two different castings. I'm favoring this one for kind of the left side of the building. I'm going to stick with his configuration where there's kind of the bar hotel on the right side and the junk store on the left. I'm favoring this for the junk store because this will be that nice sign that he provided with this kit. And I wanted to do it over brick. I thought it would make a lot more sense to do it over like a more original looking wall. It's kind of cool. Each casting's different. You see he's got some exposed stone. Depending where this goes, this probably won't even be seen a whole lot on this layout. But anyway, this is the alcove section. So I'm just looking over the castings here, getting ready to do the sub-assemblies of the walls. So you can use just about any kind of glue with this hydrocal. I like to use a little bit of CA to kind of tack things together, and then I'll follow up sometimes with some wood glue. And I'll show you how I do it. This is kind of an unusual setup for his buildings. He kind of had to do this long wall, and in the instructions he mentions that he decided to split this casting so he could package it better and all that. So let me see. I just kind of roughly sanded this section here, so this seam will be butted together. I just use this CA. You don't have to be like a scientist about this, but what I like about doing this is I can kind of speed up the assembly a little bit. Just use a straight edge. These castings are actually pretty clean and straight. And just use some Insta-Set. Give it a second. I always push my luck. I always start moving it around just to see if I got a bond. You don't have to. And this is probably pretty good. You have the choice of reinforcing these buildings too with anything you want on the inside. Right now, I just kind of want to get the shell put together so I can build a base for it, and that'll really make it solid. All right, so we're stuck together pretty good. What I like to do is just run a little stripe of wood glue in there. That'll help make it solid. And then I recommend doing this on an interior wall or something, and you just follow up with a damp cloth just to get that off, get that extra glue off there. But I like to get that into the seam if I can. I'll do it in the corners too. My only gripe with this back wall is this kind of freight door aligns with the bar and not the junk shop. I mean, I could flip things around, but I was kind of favoring the bar to be on the right side, looking at it from the front. So I don't know, maybe there's an imaginary hallway back there. I don't know, it's not gonna matter. So I'm gonna put this off to the side. I'm gonna assemble this little alcove piece here. And I gotta do a little sanding on here. I'm thinking about putting a door on this alcove piece if I could get this into the shot. I think an entry door here, implying that there's maybe a stairwell, separate entrance to the, probably be an apartment over the junk store and some rooms over the bar. I think that's the intent of this building. The alcove section should be pretty straightforward. I'm gonna use a 1, 2, 3 block here to get this set. Chase some glue out of there. I just have a scrap piece of 220 or whatever this is kicking around, just knocking off any high spots where I want to apply glue. Another block here. I'm gonna do these 2 front wall sections, and according to the instructions, he has these side pieces here. Dig them out. And they're gonna glue in like that. Just gonna do a little cleanup on these. Doesn't take much to knock off this flash or whatever. You can tell this kit's pretty old. It's 20-year-old kit, 21 years old. I mean, even the staple here is rusted. All right, here's his assembly instructions for these front wall sections. Here's his laser cut sections here. So let me see. Pretty neat. All right, here's some progress. As you can see, I've been busy with a laser cutter. I fabricated the roof using some 2mm quick board, and was able to scribe some lines in here, which will be very helpful when I lay the shingles on. He provided these patterns and some thick styrene to do these roof sections in, but I decided to do this in the laser cutter, and I made some mods. His pattern only had you cutting the roof back this far, which would have kind of blocked these windows, so I cut it back a ways so I can have some interiors in the attic here. Not fully decided what I want to do yet. I'm kind of thinking this might be like an attic with some old crates and furniture, and this might be like a bedroom. There might be like a little mini apartment kind of scene in there. Haven't quite decided yet. Anyway, these are my shingles that I laser cut. This is one of the first things I figured out on a laser cutter, so I can make a lot of my own material, and being able to scribe these lines in here will be real helpful for laying on the shingles. Here's how the interiors are looking right now. As you can see, I did some of these 5-panel doors. I got some like 30-inch and 36-inch wide ones, and I made this stuff out of this chipboard, which I don't think I'm going to use too much anymore. I'll burn up the rest of what I got. It's real cheap. Problem is when you start cutting this stuff, it tends to delam. I don't know if you can see this. Kind of delaminates, and I didn't really like it. I think I'm going to just stick with using that 20 thousandths MDF. So here's the first floor. So I think these doors will look pretty nice when the interiors are all painted up. So I'm almost about ready to start doing some paint work. I gotta paint the roof. Might as well build up all the windows and paint all the trim. Gotta decide on some colors. Kind of leaning toward like a olive green, Pullman green. You know, it'll be weather beaten and chipped off and all that stuff. So that's next, I think. All right, so I wasn't actually too stoked on the way these floor assemblies came out, mostly because, I don't know if you could tell, but I had some warpage here with this 3mm basswood, and I'll continue to use basswood, but I'll have to use it in a way where like every section is supported so I don't suffer from this. But I'm sticking with a basic concept here. It'll kind of go together like this, but now I'm doing it in 3mm MDF. So you can see I have some of the wall assemblies already done. I even redid the doors. I did them in that 20 thousandths polyback, so everything came out a lot more crisp. So I'm going to do a little painting on here. See the floor ceiling assemblies. Just the stack up here. I actually smartened up and actually scribed floorboards into each floor, so I'll sand this out and paint this a little bit for the interior floors, and start getting this put together. So this was the second floor, kind of apartments, and then this is the first floor, bar room, and this would be the shop side, and then of course this is the attic. And then how I did this, even though I'm using MDF, I think it'll be less susceptible to the warping that basswood is exhibiting. I built these end walls for the first floor assembly. So I'll put this together and I'll give you the basic idea here. All right, so we're making a little painting progress here. Probably should have talked about how I painted this. I forgot to film it. And I think I used one of these like rail center colors. Can't remember which one. If it was grimy brown or this red brown. But I'm liking this paint lately. The wood parts here and the windows were done with Model Masters tan with some Vallejo chipping medium, and then painted over with Tamiya dark green. This is the color scheme I'm going with. And this concrete color is some Model Masters acrylic aged concrete. So that's what we got going on here. And just making a little progress in the paint department. Here's what our floor and wall assemblies are gonna start looking like. So I always do my interiors with this any kind of aged white. I think I'm using some Model Air right now. It's okay. Not my favorite paint in the world, but I like this color. I think it just works out good for all the interiors. I usually do a light color on the walls. So I'm gonna do a minor wash over this stuff, scuff sand it a little bit, and start assembling. Probably should have mentioned too, I went over my floor color with some old Model Masters wood. I like that color a lot. That's gonna be the basis for the floorboard colors. All right, so here's what the floor assemblies look like. So like I said, bar room, big apartment, smaller apartment. This would be the junk shop. Kind of an attic, an unfinished attic. I'll probably just fill with junk. Maybe spill over from the shop. And then this would be like another, kind of like a bachelor pad apartment, you know. So now the trick is to drop this whole thing in here. And I did try this before, but oh my God, it just went right in. I thought I'd have to take this over to the sander. Just give it a couple kisses on the old belt sander, but on it. That went right in on video. Let's see if it comes back out. It's a tight fit. So yeah, I don't know. I think this ought to work. Kind of like doing them this way. That way I can, you know, detail this all out. So you see, like, the center column is because this here. I was gonna put like a wooden bump out. I just haven't decided yet. I kind of like this. I was gonna put like a bunch of like trash cans and stuff. Would have been cool maybe to put a window in here. I was almost thinking of like maybe putting like a wooden like an infill section with wood, but I don't know what I'm gonna do yet. Anyway, it kind of saved me a bunch of work. I didn't have to make any rooms here, and then I could probably run a lot of my wiring for my LED lighting and stuff through here. Plenty of room through the back side of this too. So you can see there's sections that aren't really finished out. So this would be the back of that junk shop, and probably have, you know, the view will kind of vanish around this corner. Probably bring some wiring up through here. That's what these holes were for. And I'll pop some holes here and there. But I can do some nice lighting effects for all the different rooms and stuff. So everything got kind of just a black and brown acrylic wash with some highlights. Nothing too radical. You don't have to go too crazy, I don't think, on the interiors, because the view into them is so limited, you know, through the windows. This has nice window features though, so. But yeah, that's what we're looking like. A little shop worn, you know, going for, you know, a little honest look, you know, kind of a working class sort of vibe, kind of like the rest of my Northbrook town, you know. So I'll come up with what I want to use for furniture. Probably use a lot of my resin prints from my last few projects. This was a bar back I came up with. I printed this FDM style. It's okay. I got a couple. Some came out better than others. I was experimenting with this like arch, and Tinkercad allows you to make these cool like vector shapes now, so you can get arches and stuff. So this was gonna go way into the back. I was planning on using two of them, but I don't know. Here's my my bar. It's gonna be L-shaped, and this was a variation on a bar I built probably for the Bessemer bar. I've been using the same design and just kind of moving it around in Tinkercad. As you can see, I crashed it into another shorter section and made an L-shaped bar. That's done in resin, so I think it's gonna go like that. I got a bunch of stools and stuff made. So yeah, we'll see how that works. And I got a bunch of like stools and high top tables, and I don't know, this is a lot smaller than I thought it would be once I started playing around with the layout in here. So I don't know if I'll do 2 bar backs in there, but basic idea so far. I think I've decided on the final location. I think it's going to be here in place of the old Downtown Deco Union Hall that you've probably seen in the background on some of my vids. I wanted to put it here because it's pretty close to the front of the layout, so you can see most of the detail. And this wall here is pretty well exposed, so I can do that nice bottoms up mural. I'll have to redo some of the pavement around here, and I may shift it over a little bit. I'll probably have to cut into that hillside and probably just put a retaining wall and stuff like that there. But I think this would be a good spot for it to show off the interior detailing I'm gonna do for it. So in the meantime, right now I have the Labor Temple Union Hall way back here. Kind of like the way it looks, kind of tucked at the back of the town like that. So I'll have to redo some of that street. That's Claiborne Street, that little short street back there. And I think this is what I'm going to go with. I'm going to semi-retire these 2 buildings, that smoke shop and that's a Town York storefront that I kind of had vacant. So I think that's what I'm going to do. But that'll be a separate project. That's just kind of a test fit right now. So you can see here, this is Main Street, so you can get like a clear view to the back of the layout now. I've always thought about extending this out. I'll probably do it someday, just not right now. But I think that's what I'll go with. I kind of like that little house being there. I like having these little houses mixed in with a town scene. So I'm on kind of a long campaign to kind of improve this little town section anyway. I want more detailed buildings and stuff like that. So it'll happen eventually. Just these buildings take a lot of time to do. I printed up another batch of the grouping I made for this building, but I think I'm going to take a break from painting. As you can see, I got like the L-shaped bar kind of done. I got to repaint some of these crates and boxes and stuff. I was going to say, if you're ever at a train show, you probably run into these all the time and get these for like $1 or $2. They're worth even $3. This is a good start for doing your interiors. And whenever I see these, I just grab them. I got a bunch of these. There's some different variations on them too, but they've been around forever. All right, here's a little progress report. As you see, I've got quite a bit going here. I'm working on multiple things at once. As I get bored with the tedium of one thing, I kind of jump on to something else. So as you can see, I'm working on the roof assembly. Did a little bit of the interior detailing. As you can see, I've placed some furniture. Working on my ideas as I go along. This is kind of like an upstairs, maybe like bedroom for this apartment, or maybe like a rented room for a local worker or something. I don't know. This will be the attic side. As you can see, I got some of the lighting in. I'll show you how I did it. I also made these portal walls. I really like doing these. I did this on the laser cutter. These 2 pieces here. Kind of like doing these because when you look into the open windows, you get like a little bit of separation from, like I've been doing on my other structures. I'll have like a living room sitting area here, kitchen, dining in the back there. Gonna do that with both of these apartment scenes. Anyway, I'll show you how I did the lighting. I 3D printed these little light fixtures. And what I ended up doing was I cut up some of this copper-clad RC board. I got some of this off Amazon. And what I'm doing is I'm kind of using them as convenient distribution boards for all the LEDs I'm wiring up. Right now I'm kind of experimenting with the dropping resistors to get different brightness. The idea is I really like to use as many different resistors as I can on the LEDs so I can change the brightness of each individually. So that's that'll kind of get worked on as I progress here. I might want to like make that table lamp a little brighter than the ceiling lighting kind of thing. So I could do that by changing these dropping resistors. Some of these LEDs are wired in parallel, so they become kind of like a current divider circuit. And I just sized the dropping resistors accordingly. Some of the roof progress, I got sick of messing around with the interior stuff, making some extra parts, painting them and all that. So I just decided to come work on the roof for a bit. And I 3D printed these little gable end detail pieces. Pretty simple 3D prints. I thought it might add a little interest to the roof. And as you can see, I'm laying in my laser cut shingles. I think I'm gonna kind of go for a slate roof kind of look. So it doesn't have to be super perfect, but you can see the lines that I kind of engraved into this into the roof helps align the shingles so they're not super crooked. All right, so here's our roof progress. So you can see I've been laying my laser cut shingles. I hope I make it. This is all I have left. I really don't feel like going up into the garage to cut some more because it's very cold. I just have to do this panel here. So I just kind of penciled these lines in here just for reference as I lay the courses up here. Not a perfect shingle job by any means. I'm kind of going for a kind of a rustic look, you know, but not too overly janky, you know. So I think it's gonna look pretty good when I'm done. I just gotta finish this. This is a lot more time than I want to admit. But I think the results will be worth it. All right, it's a little roof progress here. I had to reinforce the interior a little bit of it. But I also added these little resin printed finials. I kind of doodled these up in Tinkercad. Eventually, I'm gonna do some copper clad caps here, and these will be copper too. I think it'll look pretty neat on the slate roof. All right, so let's kind of review what's going on here. Decided to redo the storefronts. The original ones were fine. I just wanted something a little different. I wanted these ray windows or something. I don't know what they call these, but I kind of wanted that element of design to these, and I'm no architect or nothing like that. I'm just kind of freestyling this stuff. Anyway, I did these on my FDM printer. Did them in layers, like 25 thou layers. I thought it looked pretty good. And normally I try to do these with my laser cutter, but I didn't feel like freezing to death out in the garage. So this is what we got. I wanted two different designs kind of to differentiate the two spaces, you know. This is the bar side, and this will be the junk store. Have some nice double doors to get your large purchases through. And so that's what's going on here. And I made these frames to kind of host them. And then I wanted to fill this gap. If I planned it right, I probably should have milled some doorways in this center section, but instead I decided to kind of do this clapboard center section. And I did this on the FDM printer too. I got to make some doors, but these will be like kind of independent stairwells that go straight up to the apartments. So that's what's going on here. It's a rather tight fit, but that's how I ended up doing it. On the back side, I wasn't really too thrilled with these features that were done, the way they popped them out. If I was real slick, I probably could have milled these down or something before I started the assembly. Anyway, there was some kind of freight doors. They're more aligned with the bar side here anyway. And these two windows, and you're supposed to frame them out with some material provided. I think they're rather thick. There's also this mysterious ductwork. I'm gonna keep it. I'll figure out something to do with it. But to cover this whole section, I decided to make this lean-to, and this is an FDM print, and it's gonna fit over here. It's got a little kind of freight door, and this was an FDM print. It's actually not that nice of a print because I forgot to add supports. But anyway, I decided to save it. Another thing too, when it was printing, I ran out of Hyper PLA, so it was the first time I was able to recover a print or continue on after changing out my spool. So it was roughly a 4.5 hour print. It kind of died about 2.5 hours in, and I didn't want to give this up, so I just decided to try to recover it. Anyway, it's a single print, but I did the window separately, as you can see. I'm using a Grant Line little shed door here, so I made the hole to host it. Put it all together with some bonding. This is just a styrene roof. In fact, it's the material that was provided for the original roof. And luckily, I had some corrugated iron left in my scrap bin, so it's gonna get a tin roof back here. Nothing too crazy because you'll never really see this, but I did want to cover these features. I probably could have left it go because this is facing the back of the layout anyway, but this is how I'm gonna go with it. Eventually, when I'm done painting it, I'm just gonna glue it right to the back with some E6000 or whatever. Here's the storefront assemblies. I tinker-doodled some little light fixtures, and I put a little 0402 LED in there, and got one for the storefront, the bar front, also the apartment entryway. They're gonna share this light fixture here. I ended up laser cutting these doors because I wasn't happy with the way the FDM prints came out. So these 5-panel entry doors, and then I'll make the LED dropping resistor. Will go somewhere inside here, and I'll have to figure out a way to route the wiring out. So yeah, lots of stuff going on here. Here's my Tinkercad account. You can see all the simple stuff I make. I'm making these monitor top refrigerators. I got a few different versions here. They just came out of the resin printer. I gotta go wash them up and do a final cure on them, see if I like them. But I did kind of like a globe top style. Wow, what was that? See that? I don't know what I did there. Anyway, you can see all the other simple little doodles I make for all the various parts I need. So fast, you know, and like even like the windowsills. I used to cut these out of like basswood, but you know, I can doodle these and send them over to the printer while I do other things. I think it was like a 9-minute print anyway to make like a dozen of these. You see like all the windows. With the FDM printer, I can kind of get away with about 25 thousandths thickness reliably when I make these simple parts. You can see here's all the simple stuff anyway. One thing I like about the 3D printing is I kind of make materials, so like I actually was able to make like a clapboard chunk that I can use for different things, and then you know I can make copies of these and doodle in like window and door cuttings and stuff like that. But this is kind of how I come up with my stuff. Very, very simple stuff. Nothing like too impressive, but you know, if I was to like go buy these detail parts on my own, you know, I was saving really like hundreds of dollars doing this stuff. So the 3D printing tech kind of pays for itself after about a year or so. All right, lots of detail parts here in various stages of completion. I think my monitor top refrigerators came out all right, good enough. Got a few different variations on. I'm gonna make some more trash cans. I made some grandfather clocks too. Tinkercad has this little, like almost like a freehand drawing feature now, so I was able to make that little crown on top there. I gotta finish painting those things. All right, so I should probably take a break and talk about what's going on here. As you can see, I'm in the process of getting all these details into the interior. Reusing or using a lot of stuff I made from my last few efforts. I tried to make extras, burning through this stuff pretty good, so I'm in the process of also making some new stuff, like here's a bed. And I did this sheet effect. I was kind of trying to figure out a way to make it look like, you know, there was some covers on here, and that's just clear decal film. Should work out all right once it's painted up. Anyway, as you can see, here's the junk store. So, or I don't know, is it a junk store? I mean, there's some useful stuff in here. So some good bargains. There's some furniture, some decorations, some rugs, all kind of stuff. And then here's our bar scene. And as you can see, I made a mirror, bar mirror back there. You can see I got the taps, nice bartender. I'm using some Artista figures and also these kind of generic eBay figures you can get off eBay for like populating your passenger cars. One thing I gotta mention on the Artista figures, you gotta kind of be careful. A lot of them are like really big. Like this lady, I think is like 6'3". So these are some figures I made when I was messing around with Blender, and I got them into Tinkercad once. I got an STL out of that effort, and I actually spliced some different heads onto these guys because the Blender models weren't that good because they're all polygon based. For some reason, the heads kept like disintegrating when I would print these. Anyway, these are good enough. I kind of subscribe to the attitude of like the interior details only have to look so good. They're not getting very fancy paint jobs because you're going to be looking at this stuff through the windows, and it'll be a very limited field of view on this stuff. So it only had to be so good. So right now, this is the kind of the store, like the attic with some extra stuff in here. I don't know how much of this you'll actually see. Same with this little like uncle's bedroom or whatever this is supposed to be. probably like inspired by like my Uncle Neil's apartment back when I was a kid. I always liked his apartment. He had like crazy antiques and stuff like that. And anyway, this is kind of sort of based on that. I'm in the process of figuring out, how I'm gonna lay out these two apartments. They won't be like fully fleshed out. I don't have bathrooms. It's kind of implied that there's these doors that, you could say they're going into a bathroom or maybe a stairwell or whatever. So that's my next part of the project here, is getting these done, getting these two apartments. Also, I don't know if you could tell, I had to laser out a couple more wall sections. I noticed when I was kind of putting the building together, there are these gaps you could see. I could see this edge of these walls here through the windows if you caught it at a right angle. So I just lasered these up last night and got them in place now. So we'll get some signage on there. I got this little corner I got to figure out some other little mini vignette to put in or something. I don't know. Maybe I'll just put a sign and just leave it blank for now till I come up with something. So I'm thinking I'm done with this interior assembly. I don't want to do much more. I've added a few more things as I went along. This little, like uncle's apartment here, had a little sink and a mirror. Put another sconce light in there. Just chucked a few more things into the attic. I got these like rolled carpets and stuff. Like I said, a lot of these are going to be viewed through a window, so the details don't have to be like perfect. I got to reuse a lot of stuff I had laying around, and when I make these details, I try to make enough extra to give me a head start on the next project. So that's kind of what went on here. And so I got both apartments kind of furnished out. So you can see I got a Murphy bed in here. This old guy, Uncle Slim, here's talking to his pooch, maybe seeing if he's ready to go out for a walk or something. But I think this came out okay. The Murphy bed idea was just to fill this little gap. I think that came out all right. I'll probably use that idea again because it kind of gives kind of a vintage look to these old apartments, I think. So here's the kitchen. I did add another light in here, another sconce light on the back. And bar scene, I added a couple more pictures on the walls. So I think there's enough detail on each of these little mini scenes to convince you of, you know, human activity. So I'm about ready to put this into the building, and it'd be nice to get this off the bench. I think we're done here. All right, let's drop this in. All right, so that's that. All right, so got the interior assembly installed. And what's next is to do the storefronts and the apartment entries and get the LEDs wired up on those. Let's see what this looks like. I've got my power supply here. All right, so the outdoor lighting's done. Just gotta put this all together now. Do a little touch up, and then I can start doing some weathering on the outside, final assembly and final details, signage, all that sort of stuff. All right, this has to be like my favorite part of the whole process here. I'm doing a light black and brown acrylic wash over the brick now. And as you can see, it starts to, actually starts to pop everything. What I like about doing a black wash is it does a couple things. Grime, also does shadow, and also helps separate paint lines, you know, especially if you're hand painting a lot of stuff. I don't get too wound up about getting all the paint lines perfect because the black wash, you know, you can even like kind of trace these lines with a fine brush, kind of do a pin wash in there. It helps separate all these colors. So this is like my favorite part. So you see this side's been lightly black washed, just tap water and cheap tube acrylics, you know, and you see the contrast here. So this is basically you know, almost like the raw spackle. It's been cleared over so that when I'm doing this stage, I'm not washing it all the way and turning it into like a gray mush, you know. But you can see that it actually starts coloring the mortar a little bit, but it still leaves a little bit of the whiteness. So I haven't decided on the final details, like the service, like, you know, like the utilities, like meters and stuff like that, where they're going to go or how many I'm going to have. And then there's going to be more signage, but I haven't decided yet. I just felt like chilling out and just doing this for a little bit. I just love these Downtown Deco buildings, though. They're really neat. The guy that does these, he's got a real good eye for style, you know. Just like comes up with some pretty unique stuff. And I wish he would make more, especially some of these larger structures he's done over the years. Would be cool if he made some small industries this style. I know he does a lot of stuff in HO. Wish I could, somebody could convince him to do some more stuff in O scale. Stuff is just so much fun to do. So you can see I'm just going along here, and you know, you can come back with a different brush and different concentrations of the wash. But I'm kind of doing this live. I actually like to work this kind of wet. I think it works out best. You can take as much time as you want doing this. I have so much fun doing this. It's like one of my favorite parts. It's the final weathering. All right, slowly but surely we're making our way out of the shop, so I'll just go over some of the final exterior details I'm working. I got some of the signage done on this end of the building. I was really reluctant to cover this nice brick, but I found this Duquesne Pilsner logo on the internet, played around with it, resized it, flipped it in a photo editor, whatever Windows has for a photo editor now. I just flipped it and then had to cut and paste the original logo back on because the original one, his hand's going up to the left. I wanted it to kind of go up the center of the building here. So it's a paper sign. This is kind of an old school trick. It's not as nice as doing a decal or hand painting something like this, but it's quick and effective. And if you work it just right, you can get some of the brick texture out of it so it does look painted on. Where it lives, where it's going to be living on the layout, I think it'll look perfectly fine. And to do a decal, you know, you'd have to trace this out, paint the background white, because as you know, if you do an inkjet decal, you don't get any of the white. And then some of these shaded areas probably wouldn't come out that great. So I went with this. The idea is that you get the image to the way you want. I kind of import all the images into Microsoft Word because I find it's easier to resize it using like real engineering units, you know. And then I'll print multiple copies and play around. So then the idea is when you get it cut out, you kind of sand the back of the paper and you try to use diluted white glue to lay it in there. And if you're careful with like some kind of pointy object instrument, you can work it into the brick mortar and stuff. This building doesn't actually have very deep mortar, so the effect is semi-limited. But I think it looks fine. I've got some services added on here. I've got a little phone line going into the apartment, got some gas meters. So we're slowly getting this out. Got the signage on the front. Fairly simple signage. This is what came with the kit. I've been 3D printing these little frames though. They're really quick print just to finish them off. And I was playing around with this apartment entry. I'm not an architect or anything. I'm not trying to be one. I just wanted to fill this gap in. And I just sort of envisioned like, 2 flights of stairs. Maybe they're private. They go to each side of the building here to access these apartments. And I came up with some little mailboxes. I decided it was kind of plain, so I made this little like half of a hip roof here. And went into my trash can and fished out some of these laser cut shingles from my previous effort. 3D printed some little brackets. These are all 3D prints. So I think it's pretty believable, pretty plain, but I just wanted to kind of fill that gap in there. I didn't want to cut doors into it. I would have had to have done that before I started assembling all this stuff. So, and on this end of the building, we've got our electrical service in here. This is just a modified print from my last couple buildings, and just a piece of brass tube that I soldered some wires into. And these little insulators are some old keel line parts that I found kicking around. And typical for a lot of these downtown deco buildings. I didn't really know what he intended for this feature. I thought about milling it off somehow and then recarving the brick, but I kind of left it for last. I didn't really decide what I was going to do for it, so I just came up with this sign here, and I'm just going to lay it right over that. I think it should look pretty cool. So that's about it for the exterior details. I really want to get this out of the shop now. I was kind of a little indecisive about what I wanted to do for this center section, and I went as far as to print this piece with a single door and some different windows, I think, to help complement these other ones I had here. But in the end, I decided to just leave this go. I was going to cover this with some insul brick. Decided not to, though. All right, so here's about where it's going to land. Quite a bit of site preparation to get this in here. It may get shifted over to the right about a ½ inch just to line up with the end of that sidewalk. I'm going to have to replace that whole sidewalk, and got to trim this hillside a little bit, and then I think we should be good. And then I'll have to redo some of the street details there. Not sure if that utility pole will stay there, but that's basically the general idea, kind of to have an alley hanger style pole there. So I think it's in a pretty cool spot. So like, when I'm filming trains down at track level, you'll see those painted signs. All right, so here's what's going on over here. The reconfiguration of the foundation spot for the building. I just moved some of my street panels around. I'm trying to recycle as much material as possible to save me some work. So I even have a retaining wall here I made out of some scrap. I found a scrap retaining wall in one of my boxes, kind of embedded it in here. So this whole section of town it's kind of raised up on an 1.5 inch piece of foam. That's how I get that little difference in elevation from the track level at the front of the layout. And then all my street and sidewalk work is done with 1/8 masonite, which is basically this stuff here. And I paint everything with Krylon Rust-Oleum khaki. That's the color, my go-to color over the years. However, this time around, my latest can of this stuff is quite a bit different in color. It's a lot sandier. So I decided to recycle some old sidewalk panels I had. I had to cut them up to fit. So next step will be to, I'll paint all this stuff flat black. It's pretty much configured to plant the building now. Paint this all up flat black, do some final touch up on the concrete here, and replant my trees and do all the ground foam and stuff. And we should be making pretty good progress. Just wanted to show you something real quick. I know a lot of people when they use this extruded foam insulation for scenery, their habit is to cover it with like plaster or something. I don't subscribe to that. I like to use it as raw as possible. It takes paint really well. As you can see, I'm just daubing on some like cheap artist acrylic here, and just diluted with tap water. And this is just, it's so fast. You can make landforms very rapidly. Look how that just soaks in almost like wood grain, So I don't tend to cover my extruded foam insulation stuff at all. And I just think it's so much faster to just paint it. I paint it black. You can paint it whatever earth tone you desire. I like black because you have any kind of gap in your scenery, like something like that even, it tends to shadow itself. It just hides itself. And I feel like I don't have to use as much ground cover maybe, or worry about holes I've made in my scenery, whether on purpose or by accident, or I miss something. But you can see this stuff takes latex or acrylic paint like no prob. So not the most attractive thing right now, but once the ground cover's over it, it'll look like everything else. I'm just going just in the general area, just going through and touching up some stuff. I really enjoy doing this. One thing I learned about like doing these cracks and stuff in the street is like to kind of put a little color on the panel that you cracked a little bit. And I think it kind of looks cool, kind of makes it, maybe it looks like it dropped a little bit, you know. It's just very diluted brown craft paint. It's like, I don't know if anybody will ever see this. All right, so I'm going in, I'm patching up all the ground cover, and most of the greenery on this layout was Scenic Express Adirondack blend. And at one time when I was working on this layout in the early days, I bought like a 5-gallon bucket of that, and then, you know, followed up over the years with some smaller quantities. But a lot of this stuff has been recovered from the layout and then reground, and I'll grind it up in an old coffee maker like this. I'll keep this stuff on hand. This is stuff I scraped off of scenic landforms when I was doing remodels and stuff, and I would keep it. And as I use it, I'll just run it through this old coffee grinder, and I'll get a consistency like that. And I can use it for general cover and fill. So with the coarseness of this, you know, I can build up quite a bit of fill. So you can see why I'm not like super concerned with getting my foam, my foam scenery base, like super perfectly smooth. I think the most I've ever done is taken like some 80 grit sandpaper and just, you know, kind of honed it down a little bit. But this is kind of my rough green technique. You can see I've used some static grass. I don't think I'm gonna bother with some more static grass on here. So a lot of times what I'll do is I'll just paint wood glue. I might spray like a little bit of wet water. Sometimes I'll do it with an eyedropper or just an old Windex bottle. Some just tap water with a few drops of dishwashing liquid or hand soap or whatever. You know, I'll use that, and I'll just paint carpenter's glue or white glue, whatever I have on hand to do the base coat. And then I'll do another loose coat over it, and then I'll do one of these actions, you know, I'll just get the wet water in there, and hopefully you can see that travel. But this is how I build up layers anyway. So you see that's pretty wet. You see when I see how it flows through, and that helps kind of affix everything, and that way I can build up a layered look. I think I forgot to talk about how I painted the roof. It's pretty simple to get the slate look. I painted the whole thing just like a grimy black color, then washed it over with some black tube acrylics. Then I picked out some of the shingles with different earth tones and some gray tones and stuff like that. And then the copper clad flashing and the finials, they were painted brown first, and then kind of washed over with some old poly scale Penn Central green to get that copper effect. The final step was just some light gray dry brushing to get that streaking. All right, so it's on the layout, and this project's just about wrapped up. I think I'll probably do a few more little street details as time goes on, but this is pretty much what it's gonna look like. And I'm rather pleased with the level of interior lighting. I think it ought to look pretty cool. So that's what it looks like at night. So here's looking down the street. I don't think that guy should be hanging out in the street, but anyway, hopefully he's gonna make it home. Anyway, I haven't done one of these painted signs in a long time. I think it's pretty cool. Should be pretty cool for future videos where you see this kind of off in the background. Here's what the back side of the building looks like. Pretty uneventful, but just thought I'd cover up some of the features I probably should have attended to before I started the assembly. So yeah, just mulling over some changes for this area too. I'm kind of thinking about moving some buildings around. Possibly the rooming house there. It's a scratch build. It's been on the layout quite a while. I was thinking of finding a new spot for it. Mostly because when I film from the other side of the layout, it can tend to blow out because it's a white painted building. So when I'm filming engines here, I have to correct for it, and it kind of blocks the view of the Jim Thorpe house. So I was kind of thinking maybe someday I'll swap it with the Atlantic Hotel, put that into retirement till I come up with a better idea for it. And I'm working on one of those Woodland Scenic substations. I have to modify it quite a bit to fit that spot. So I don't know. It's just I'm always kind of thinking of new ideas for the layout. I'll tell you what though, it's easier to build fresh scenery, I think, than to modify your existing stuff. It'll drive you crazy. At least it drives me crazy. So anyway, this is about what we're gonna end up with.